In this unit, we're going to learn about quadratic functions and quadratic equations and how to solve them, how to graph them, and all kinds of things relating to quadratic functions. All right, so first, we've got to know what a quadratic function is. So the general form of a quadratic function is right here. We write it as f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c, where a is 0. All right, so anytime we have basically something with an x squared, we're going to see. So y equals 2x squared plus 3x minus 5, or y equals x squared plus 2. Anything basically with an x squared as the highest degree. We call that the degree, the greatest exponent. That is a quadratic function. All right, the graph of this will always be a parabola. And we're going to talk about how to solve a quadratic equation now. So a function has a y or an f of x, which f of x replaces y. And so we can write it with a y or not. But an equation has just one variable, and usually we stick with x, but obviously it could be any variable. So we have one variable, that makes it a quadratic equation. So we're going to start out by relating quadratic functions with quadratic equations. So our first method that always works, but it doesn't give exact answers always, that is solving equations graphically. So we're going to pull out a calculator and see how we can solve using a graphing calculator. So we're going to get our graphing calculator going here. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to graph these two equations here separately. So we go to the y equals key. We're going to graph x squared minus 1 first. And so we're going to type in x squared using the x key here, squared minus 1, and we go to graph. And there's our graph. That's our x squared minus 1. If your zoom looks weird, hit the zoom key and go to zoom standard. So sometimes your window will get a little different. So zoom standard, you'll see this nice look. Now we've got to graph the second half here. So y equals x squared, or x plus 7, that is. X plus 5, I guess I can't read. Use the x key, plus 5, and we get a line. Now we want to find out where they cross. Because where they cross here is our solution. Okay, the solutions happen where they cross. So we've got to find that out. If you do that, we're going to use this intersect menu here. So here's the steps right here. So this is how we want to go find those intersection points. Okay, so we're going to go to second, and we're going to go to calculate, and then it's going to ask us for the left bound. So we're going to move this cursor. See that cursor moving there? Using the left arrow, we're moving that cursor over just to the left of this point, anywhere. Now we move it to the right, and then we get this point right there. All right? So what just happened is we told it that we're looking for the point that's in between that left bound and that right bound, and there it is. And the intersection is 2, 3. So we now know that these cross at the point 2, 3. Your window might look a little differently here, by the way. This is an emulator here on the iPad, and but it will show up down here in a similar way. You'll see an X and a Y down at the bottom of the screen. And that's where they cross. So now we need to find the other point. So we're going to go to second intersect. Actually, when you go to second calculate, that is. So calc is above trace, and then you'll go to intersect. You're going to go to intersect here. And we want to find, again, the left bound. So we're looking for this point, so we go to the left of it. We move the cursor over to the right of it. And it tells us that that point crosses at 3, 8. So this point right here is at 3, 8. Okay. And so we found our 2 points. All right. So the key here is we're trying to solve this equation. Notice that there's only x's. There's no y's in the equation. All right. So keep that in mind. There's no y in the original equation. We don't care about the y. We just care about the x. What are the x values that where they meet, where both of these two sides are the same? Well, it is at 2, x equals 2, and x equals 3. Two answers. So you got to have both answers. All right. All that means is that when you plug in 2 here, 2 squared minus 1 is 3. Oh, you know what? I wrote that wrong, and I just found that. Of course it's not. It's negative 2. I copied that wrong. You probably found that. All right. So negative 2. You probably saw that while I was going. All right. So it's negative 2 and positive 3. Of course. So anyways, that's the key. We're looking for the x-coordinate where they cross. Now this can also be done on Desmos, on a Desmos graphing calculator, which you can get at desmos.com there. And so we can enter the two equations there. The two sides of our equation, right? We had x squared, and that was x squared minus 1. So let's go to x squared minus 1. And there we go. X squared minus 1, there's our function. Okay. And so you can go to our home view here. And then the other side was y equals x plus 5. And we want to find out where they cross. Now to do that, on Desmos, all we got to do is click on the point. It's at negative 2, 3, and 3, 8. So it is pretty slick on the computer, or if you have the Desmos app for the Desmos graphing calculator. There they are. You found them, and you got your solution. All right. So that's pretty handy as well. But you need to use your graphing calculator on test, and so we need to know how to use that. Anyways, so that works for any equation. Sometimes these will be decimals, but it will always work. So this is good to know, so you can always check your work, all right? So now graphing in standard form here. So another method we could do is this. We can take any equation, and we can add and subtract to set equal to 0. So if we take this here, and we subtract x from both sides, and we subtract 5, we're going to get this. Negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6. There is no x, so it's just going to be a minus x. And all of this becomes 0 on the right side. So we have 0 on the right side. So now what we can do is we can graph this function. The function that corresponds to this is y equals. And we want to find out where this equation equals 0. Notice the only difference between these two equations is that's a 0 and that's a y. All right. So to do that, we're going to go to our calculator again, and we'll see how we can do that. So let's come on over here to our calculator, and we're going to graph this equation here, y equals. So we're going to go to the y equals key. Let's get that going. Let's go hit that y equals key here. And we'll enter the equation, x squared. Remember to use the x variable button here. So x squared minus x plus or minus 6. And then we're going to graph it. And there's our graph of this parabola. All right. Now we want to find out where it hits 0. So we're going to go to the calculate menu. We're going to use these steps right here. Going to go second calculate. And now we want to find the 0. The 0 is where we call the x-intercept. It wants the left bound, so we're going to hit the left key to come on over. Now it looks like it's going up, but we're really going to the left of that point. Now it wants to the right of the point, so we're going to hit right, and we're going to select something to the right, and there it is. And so that gives us a 1 point, and that's at x equals negative 2. So what that told us is that this graph crosses at x equals negative 2. So when x is negative 2 and we plug it in this equation, it's going to give us 0. Negative 2 squared minus negative 2 minus 6 is going to be 0. All right. So now we're going to find the right-hand point. We got another spot. So we go to second calculate, 0. And we're going to move this cursor over. See that guy hitting the right arrow. We find the left bound, and then we go to the right of it, hit enter, and there's that point right there. So I found the second point. The second point happens at x equals 3. So when you plug in 3, 3 squared minus 3 minus 6 is 0. So there's our two answers again. Same two solutions. All right? Now we can do that on Desmos as well. So let's go look at Desmos here. And again, we have our equation that's equal to 0. So we're going to enter that equation here. And that is x squared minus x minus 6. All right, let's graph that. So we have x squared. You don't actually have to put the y equals, but it's a good habit. X squared minus x minus 6. And there it is. Now on the graphing calculator, we just saw that we had to go to second calculate. We had several steps there. Okay. So here all we got to do is come on over to our equation and we just tap on the points. There they go. So they hit when x is -2, y is 0. When x is 3, y is 0. And that's what we want the equation to be because we changed it there equal to 0. All right, so we found our two answers. Now, these are nice methods because you can check any equation. We're going to go learn how to solve quadratic equations by hand, but you can always go plug them into your calculator or Desmos and check it and see if you got the right answer. All right, we're going to do the steps algebraically, but this is a great way you can check any equation. All right. So that is the graphical method. Next, we're going to look at a couple other methods by factoring or using the square root method.